After a week slowly bumping along on the historic canal road, I had traveled approximately 360 kilometers of dirt road, which was often single lane and required my full attention. I saw very few people, and with each passing day of my northeast trajectory, the show of autumn grew more intense, reminding me just how beautiful endings can be. A new day had arrived, and it was time to roll out of this lakeside camp where I had spent the past 2 nights and continue north towards the western edge of the Northwest Territories. I felt particularly lucky to be enjoying such a pleasant autumn here in the Yukon, and as I drove, I savored the warm glow of golden aspens in hopes of creating memories to brighten the dark months ahead. I had become lost in thoughts of space and time when I came around the corner to a startling sight. Just a moose. But it sure did startle me, although not near as much as I had startled it. What a place to call home, I thought. Out here where you step off the road and it's unlikely anyone would ever find you again. It had been a couple days since I encountered other humans, and I liked it that way. I could hear myself more clearly this way. I could pretend that the outside world didn't exist, that it was just Frank and I in our trusty old van cruising through a sea of gold and evergreen. A man I once loved and traveled with gifted me a little piece of cedar upon which he had written the quote, "Happiness is only real when shared." We were about to part ways for a while, and looking back, I think my independence and comfort with myself made him a little insecure. I hadn't needed anything from him, and I would be fine without him, but instead had simply chosen to spend time with him because, well, I wanted to. That little piece of wood still lives on a shelf in my van, although I don't at all believe the sentiment to be true. At least not for myself. At this point, I've lost track of the amount of comments I've received informing me that humans are social creatures and that we need each other. Each time they pop up on my screen, my eyes roll back in my head and I wonder, am I not really human then? Don't get me wrong, I love my friends and I enjoy social time with the people of my choosing, but they're like ice cream. They're enjoyable to have in my life, sometimes exciting, other times a great relief like that tasty, icy cold treat on a hot summer's day. I savor them whenever our paths align, but I absolutely don't need them to survive. And just like ice cream, too much of a good thing leaves me with feelings of regret. More than anything, what I need is to be with myself, and the further away from other humans, the better. No two humans are the same, and as with any trait, there are outliers. There are plenty of people like myself who are so occupied with observing and dissecting the processes of their own internal world that without spending most of their time alone, life begins to feel like it's being wasted. Without enough quiet time alone, living at our own pace, agitation and anxiety begin to take over, and the noise of the modern world becomes a distraction we can no longer bear. For some, feeling alone is a scary, uncomfortable, or negative thing, especially in the wilderness. But for people more like myself, it is the best feeling there is, because that is where a life that feels meaningful unfolds. Of course, I'm never truly alone. I always have Frank, but he's calm and quiet and doesn't take away from the joy of solitude. And in a way, you're always there with me as well. Every time I pick up my camera to capture the world around me or share my experience of the moment, you're there in a way. When I'm somewhere incredibly beautiful, I feel excited to share it with you. And by watching these videos, you allow me to share while still being alone in the ways I can never seem to get enough of. Speaking of sharing, I have a great offer for you thanks to today's sponsor, Element. Element is a super convenient electrolyte drink mix that tastes amazing. I've been drinking electrolytes regularly for many years now, and it is by far my favorite. There are many awesome flavors to choose from, like watermelon salt, raspberry salt, or a citrus salt. But I want to let you know today that the grapefruit salt is back on their website as a regular flavor. It is no longer a special summer one, so you can get that all year moving forward, which is great because it has quickly become one of my favorites, and it's actually what I'm drinking right now. I personally enjoy adding electrolytes to my water because it helps me to stay properly hydrated, and it's also really important to replenish those electrolytes lost through perspiration And that means more than getting a bunch of salt, which is why Element has this science-backed blend of electrolytes and none of all this other crap you absolutely don't need in an electrolyte drink mix. And the reason it's so important to make sure you replenish all of your electrolytes, not just sodium, is because they play a vital role in countless essential functions within the body, such as sending nerve impulses, hormone regulation, proper fluid balance, and tons of other different essential functions in your body you really, really want to be operating correctly. And so if you go to drinklmnt.com/tidelinetoalpine and choose a box of whatever flavor you think you're going to like most, you're also going to get a free sample pack which includes one of all 8 flavors, so you can figure out which one you might like to try next. This is a deal you can only get through Element partners like myself. And there's really no risk because Element has a no hassle money back guarantee. So if you give it a try and you absolutely don't like it, they will refund your money. And you can also use this link to get a sample pack, even if you've already ordered before, which makes it such a great deal for you because if you fall in love with it like I have, you can get that sample pack every single time you order, which also really helps support the channel. I've really enjoyed working with Element and I know that you're going to enjoy their product as well. So once again, that is drinklmnt.com/tidelinetoalpine to get your sample pack with order today. All right, back to the road where I was enjoying one of the most awe-inspiring and beautiful days I have ever experienced cruising the back roads. I didn't begrudge the rough nature of the road, though, because the rugged track not only kept crowds away, but also forced me to slow down and really take it all in. Somehow the timing had all worked out that I ended up driving this section of road not only during nice weather, but also during the absolute peak of autumn colors, which is a very short window up here in the north. At times, it might only last a couple days. I've always been particularly fond of autumn, both for the way the world can turn from green to gold in a moment, or in this case, the entire rainbow, but also for the way I begin to turn inward. My thoughts grow more reflective, and I also become more analytical of the world around me. And so I drove, deep in thought, enjoying nature's brilliant display. And with each bend of the road, getting more and more excited about watching the world unfold ahead of me as the mountains drew closer, until soon I was completely surrounded by them and climbing up in elevation. I've intentionally created a life for myself where I have a lot of time to ponder, and as someone who is formally trained to think in large time scales and look at the big picture, my line of thought often leads to heartbreaking conclusions despite what I would rather see and believe. I might physically separate myself as much as possible from the rest of society, but I'm far from living in a happy-go-lucky fantasy world of good vibes only. I often feel like my mind is running a million miles a minute, and I have to be very mindful not to let it spin out of control and to get myself back on track when things start to feel too dark. Contentment doesn't come easily to me. It is something that I am always fighting for, something I am always choosing to pursue. Happiness is not an inevitable byproduct of van life, but rather my life is the result of an intentional choice to no longer live helplessly in the darkness of depression, so that at times happiness can shine through. After many hours on the road that day, I finally arrived at the Army truck graveyard. a historic site that I was actually expecting to come across. I'm someone who really enjoys rusty old things, but especially the green and patina of some of these trucks. That said, it was a little disheartening to see them all left behind here, rotting away. In 1948, only 6 years after the road and pipeline construction had begun, the U.S. Army returned to remove their pipeline assets and left everything else behind. Over the years, the buildings and equipment were salvaged by locals, until 1974 when the Canadian government started a cleanup effort that lasted 2 years. It was hard to see these beautiful and once very useful trucks abandoned out here because something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is the very likely reality that our society won't be cleaning up after ourselves. It's much easier to claim bankruptcy and walk away than to do the responsible thing and properly decommission infrastructure and do the remediation work. Sure, there are little wins here and there, but I can't help but feel like someday in the future, we're going to be leaving one hell of a toxic mess behind. Like this river here in the middle of a vast wilderness, which you can see is heavily polluted due to runoff from nearby mining operations. Even with filtering, it's not safe to drink, and I doubt anything lives in it anymore. But I choose not to think about these things any further and shift my focus back to the beautiful surroundings and my gratitude that I am even able to drive out to such places. This is something that I acknowledge wouldn't be possible without the same industries whose pollution was hard to see, a dichotomy I would just have to live with. And then I came across my first vehicle of the day, a man in a large truck doing transport for the mining operation. I pulled over to let him by, and he stopped to warn me of the very large and very angry grizzly bear at the army truck graveyard, which had aggressively gone after him that morning. Even though many hours had passed since the incident, I could still hear the terror in his voice as he told me how he barely escaped and warned me not to camp around there and to be very careful within this valley. He figured that at some point in time someone had shot at the bear and it now hated humans. I thanked him for looking out for my safety, and then as I continued, thought about how casually I had strolled around the old trucks not long before, paying more attention to my camera than my surroundings. I gave myself a good talking to about safety, and soon I found myself crossing over the border into the Northwest Territories, where I was greeted with a rainbow, and although the road continued to deteriorate, my curiosity kept driving me forward. Hello. I am so exhausted. It took me like 7 hours today to drive maybe 110 kilometers, and I didn't take any breaks. I was either driving or filming. Like, I didn't make any food. I just had some snacks as I drove. It was a long day, but it was so gorgeous. Just the colors just kept getting better and better and better, and the mountains and everything about it was so amazing. And so I'm stopped here at this just pull-out area on the side of a road to a mine. I am in the Northwest Territories. I had no idea how far I could get down this road, like if I could go past the border. And I went past the border several kilometers, and then I decided to take the road up towards the mine. I figured it would go to higher ground and that would be nice. And so I did go a little bit further, but then I got out and just like looked at some obstacles. I could have driven them, but I just got this feeling like I've had enough. I don't want to push it. I didn't want to drive through a creek crossing. And yeah, so I just turned around and I came back to like the first good pullout where I have this beautiful view of the mountains and everything is gold and red and just so pretty. And it's really quiet. I feel like I'm the only person in the world, and it's amazing. I love it so much. And I am so far from anything aside from some mines. So I'm about 245 kilometers from Ross River, which is the nearest town and the only gas station. I'm pretty sure I'm about to get back there on this tank, but I do have a jerry can with 15 liters, so that was another reason why I didn't keep going further up the road. And yeah, from here I will just be making my way back, just to make sure I don't run out of gas, because I'm also not going very fast. I'm averaging maybe like 20 to 25 kilometers an hour. So yeah. Yeah, it might take me like 5 or 6 days to get back. And yeah, the colors just keep getting better and better as the season progresses. And as I've come north and I've come up in elevation, I'm at 1,450 meters right now. So I am up in the mountains in, I guess this would be like subalpine, kind of like subalpine, almost tundra type environment. So yeah, I want to savor the return trip, and I still have a few weeks up in the Yukon to go some new places. So this guy has eaten his dinner and then proceeded to cry at me until I give him his after dinner treat. He's so demanding about his after dinner treat. It's really cute, but also kind of annoying, Frank. You're gonna get it. You don't have to bug me like that. Has felt like quite an adventure because I'm just really far from help and gas, and I'm kind of on the cusp of seasons, and although the forecast for the nearest town is pretty dry for the next couple weeks, you never know. So at any point I could wake up to snow, which is also really exciting. The next day it ended up raining all day, which was totally fine because I had a lot of editing to do. And when I finally finished that episode and got it uploading, I went outside for the first time since it had gotten dark and was surprised by the aurora borealis. The forecast had been pretty low, so I really wasn't expecting it, and it turns out that neither were the forecasters. It was a surprise solar storm, and although it was cloudy, it was really, really interesting to see the way the clouds lit up and seeing the aurora moving behind the clouds, because it was a really strong storm. So it was directly above me. It was 360 degrees and it was really intense, and at times moved quite quickly. And I had actually never enjoyed the night sky so much when it was cloudy, because normally I just wouldn't go outside, or there wouldn't be anything to see. And so it was kind of a first for me to enjoy the night sky with clouds, to see the aurora with clouds, and then also to take a lot of night photos with clouds, because that is something I'd never done before, is to have nighttime cloud photos. But it did end up clearing up, and I got to enjoy one of the best shows that I can recall ever seeing. But I've already talked a lot in this episode, so while I continue to show you a whole bunch of these clips of the aurora, I'm going to just put in some drumming. So I'm actually going to say farewell now. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. It means a lot to me. And also a huge thank you to patrons. You guys are so special. So I'm going to stop talking. There's going to be some drumming. And then there's going to be a cute clip of Frank, as always. So thanks again, and I will see you soon.